Hello, and welcome to another segment of the Coatesville Area Public Library's Oral History Project. I'm your host, Kirk Witmer, and with me today is yet another Coatesville native. Please welcome Paul Chenger. Paul, it's nice to have you with us today.
Glad to be here, Kirk.
Paul, you were born in Coatesville in what year?
1937.
Okay.
They were in the West End of Coatesville.
What can you remember of your early boyhood home over there in West End?
Well, it's something I'll never forget, Kurt. It was a very enjoyable life over there. We had a lot of fellows there that went to the playground every day. The suburbs is different than being in town where a lot of people, homes are close together.
Mm-hmm.
It was just close-knitted, and we had a nice bunch of kids that played every day up there, and I enjoyed it. Then we went to the education in elementary. I went to Catholic school for my first 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went from there to junior high school in Gordon. Then from Gordon over to Scott Senior High School. And I graduated in 1956.
Okay. Paul, can you remember any major differences between Catholic school and public school in those days?
Well, Catholic school, I felt, was strong in discipline, Kurt.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they offer the variety of different areas and different fields as public schools. They're just a single area they probably concentrate more so, but
Concentrated more on the basics?
In the basics, but
Mm-hmm.
yet the more activities as I went into junior high school, I really enjoyed a lot being at the public schools.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know sports have been a very important part of your life, Paul, and I would assume that probably started when you were in middle school, or
Well, way before that, Kurt.
Way
As-
before
as
that.
I said, growing up in the West End section of town, up the playground was not far away. We used to be up every day. We'd go up there and play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed all three sports: football, basketball, and baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And it was part of my life, sports.
Okay. Paul, let's see, you would have been a teenager during the World War II years, right?
Yes.
Yes? How did that impact your life as a teen?
Well, I think my mother and father, especially my father, taught us the responsibility. We didn't really have a lot. We had 7 in our family, Kurt, and really it was hand-me-downs given to me all the time. I was the youngest of 7. And it's something that I'll never forget because I felt my father really did a terrific job in teaching me self-responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I treasure that a lot because I really feel that's such an important ingredient for human life.
Mm-hmm. We've had a number of other interviewees who have talked about victory gardens and some of their specific memories of the war years. Are there any that you can share with us?
Well, the only thing I can say, Kurt, is we had fun at those gardens up there. Where I lived on Valley Road, there was a hill that would go across to the playground. And when everything was getting ripe, we'd take maybe a tomato or so. But it was fun, but yet, some of the parents that made gardens got upset because as kids always would try to get a tomato or two, but it was enjoyable. But as I said, Kurt, at that time, I guess we just enjoyed so much activity, so much fun of the physical activities. And that was special for us growing up over in that area.
Mm-hmm. After you graduated high school, what was in store for you then?
Well, if I can mention, Kurt was a real close friend, an assistant principal here at Scott Senior High School, Mr. Al Loomis. He was really responsible and told me that he said, "You're going to go to college." Well, Luke and Steel Company was the big place for everyone. I was ready to go down to the mill of work, and then he said, "No," he said, "I'm taking you over to college." And he took me over one day, and that turned my life into really education.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for him, I don't think I would have received education.
So, Paul, with college and baseball on the horizon, was there a scholarship in order for you?
Well, Kurt, when I went over there, they really didn't offer scholarships like they have today as much because I think financially they didn't have the money. But they gave you kind of working scholarships as we were like waiters, waiting for supper time on the kids and all.
Okay.
So it helped pay the fee to college.
So a job went along with the
Right,
scholarship, so
right,
you were really working
right.
it off.
Because my mother and father couldn't afford me to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I'm proud of, Kurt. I never took a quarter off Mom and Dad for my education.
Good for you.
I was thankful and grateful. They just couldn't afford it.
Mm-hmm. Paul, with so many years in education, as a teacher, as a coach, as a principal, a building administrator, you must have seen a lot of individuals come and go from teachers to superintendents all up and down the line. Has there been much of a change in teaching techniques and philosophies over the year in Coatesville?
Kurt, I don't know about the teaching techniques being so much different. I mean, today it's different because of technology. But before, I think it really had to do with a lot of the student really wanting to learn, because the education was here for a kid. All they had to do was apply themselves for the education. For instance, I'll send an example that I think years ago, I thought the students really accepted responsibilities much better than today. I feel that they were not given as much, therefore they knew they had to perform in another way and accepting responsibilities. I think today there's so much offered to them that many of them, if they want it, it's here. But the individual that doesn't want it, they're only going to hurt themselves. But I always get perturbed by people when they say to us, education is not offered great today. I'm a firm believer that education is great in schools today. It's just that that student must want it.
Paul, I know that you were one of my teachers back in the late 60s, but when did you really start teaching? Some years before that, I'm sure.
Kurt, when I was 17 in college, after my second year in college, I signed a professional contract to play baseball, and then I went away for 5 years, but in the same time, in the winter times, I would get my education. So I graduated from college in '62. Therefore, I was still playing pro baseball, but I was subbing in the Coatesville district for 2 years, and then 1964-65 was my first teaching contract. And to give you some comparison, in pro ball, I was getting like $1,400 a month. And in my first teaching salary, I received $4,800 for the year. So you can see the difference.
Yeah, quite a bit. Well, I'm sure teaching salaries have gone up since then.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's so different today, Kurt. You know, I think the money, you know, just financially, we're really doing well. But again, I think we have too much, and we don't appreciate what we would appreciate years ago of that very little we did have.
Paul, we're talking about education and we're talking about team sports. Frankly, I've always held the opinion that education is a team sport. It takes not just teachers, but parents as well. Can you give me some of your observations on attitudes of parents toward their children's education over the years?
Well, Kurt, I'd like to start like this with you and say to you that every time I've talked to my teachers, I'd always say to the teachers, remember something, it's your job to help every kid in every way possible for them to receive the best education they can. But I also say to them, each student has a reason for their behavior. We may never find out that reason, but there is a reason. And that's what I fall back onto the mother and fathers and the families. Some families are great. They give everything to help their kid to receive the best education, where others kind of completely ignore them and leave the kid on their own, which I think is sad because, you know, a child really needs a mother and father to help them through that primary stage of education, even to high school.
You can't just drop the student off when they're 5 and pick them up again at age 18.
Right, and you know, I always hear people say about the schools, Kurt, and I come back and say to you, a school is there and they offer the education for every child. But if the parent doesn't help, schools can be really hurt in many ways and get blamed for what should be the home's responsibility.
Yeah. Paul, you've spent quite a number of years in the field of education. If you would, give us a rundown on some of the various functions you've held as an educator.
I was a teacher for 10 years, and then from teaching, I became assistant principal for approximately, I think, 9 years. Then I became principal for 13 years. Totally, I was 33 years in education. And Kurt, there are some valuable experiences that I treasure forever. And I think, you know, when we talk about financial, what you make, and I always say this to all my students when I meet them out in the public. For instance, if I go to Lancaster, if I go to Reading, when you meet someone that you had in school and they say hi to you, money can't buy that. That's something just precious. And when as I said, when I retired, that's something that I really miss, is the students that you see every day, and then later you see them that they don't forget you. And it's just a valuable, precious that you can always keep forever.
And I'm sure when I sat in your health class over at the Scott School some years ago, you'd never thought that, I certainly didn't think that we would be sitting here doing an interview today either.
That's true. That's true. That, you know, many things that you go through, and then later you see those same people, you can't believe it, Kurt. Like, for instance, some of the kids you have, and now then they become something else. For instance, you know, either they become a movie star or an athlete, like at Rip Hamilton. You know, that's just special. There are special things that you could always keep.
Sure is. Paul, as we close, do you have any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with our students of today?
Well, Kurt, I'll tell you, as I said, I had 33 years of education, but there's something that our Coatesville students, each and every one of them, have the pride that I'll never forget. You know, we always compare to Westchester, Downtown, Great Valley, Conestoga, and I had opportunities to go elsewhere. But I'll treasure the kids here because I always measure them with the pride they demonstrated each and every day to us. And I always will say this, Coatesville will be my home and will always be my home. I thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We're very proud to have you as part of our oral history project in recreating some of the history of Coatesville for posterity. So thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you, sir.